I will show you how to improve your topology, especially when working on models for simulation and rigging and something like that. So let's begin with our tutorial. I'm gonna be talking about the deforming topology. So we were introduced to the quad-based grids that make up models. One of the important functions topology serves is determining how a model is going to deform. When using an armature or doing a physics simulation, all of the rules that we learned are going to help us ensure that the model deforms the way that we want it to. I would be discussing the first rule for deforming. In this tutorial, what I have discovered necessary to apply while working with 3D models that need to be bent, stretched, or twisted. So in this tutorial, we'll understand both what these rules are and why they are important to apply. So let's begin with the first rule of deformation, which is applying the bending and stretching deformation rule. As you can see here, we have the elbow joint as shown in our tutorial. Is one of the most common joints modeled on a mesh being deformed by an armature. Deformation refers to the bending or stretching of a mesh and is used to describe any shifting of the mesh after the mesh is finished. So our first deformation rule is that the edges of our grid need to be parallel to the axis of deformation, as shown here. That is a bit of a mouthful, so we are going to break it down with a few examples. So we have a plane that has been bent around the y-axis. So let me show you. Here is a plane. This is a bit mouthful, so we have this plane that has been bent around the y-axis as shown in our tutorial. So we have the same plane, but this time you can see this twisted shape as shown here, jagged corners resulting from bending the plane the wrong way as shown in our tutorial. So in order to go through the following steps to make this shape as shown here, first you need to start by pressing Shift A, add the plane from the mesh drop down, then go into edit mode, click on the right mouse button, then subdivide it like this. Go with the subdivisions, I think it's good enough. In the bottom left of the viewport, then subdivide the top will appear, increase the number here until you are satisfied with the number of faces. So now that we know how a plane is supposed to deform, we are going to look at how it is not supposed to deform. You can see a lot of jagged corners as shown here have deformed because we bent the plane the wrong way. So let's compare between these two planes. To be bent of these two planes around the y-axis as shown out because of the way the quads are positioned. We don't have a lot of control over which way the triangles are deforming. When we compare that to our mesh with proper deformation, in our example here, it is easy to tell the difference between these two planes. Next, we are going to look at more commonly deformed shape. A cylinder. Remember, a cylinder has the same topology as a plane. We have here the cylinder mesh. A cylinder has the same topology as plane as shown in our example, just to wrap it back into itself. You can delete the faces, the upper face over there and the face at the bottom, and you wrap this plane. You can get the shape of this side of this cylinder. We need to bend it along the edges or make sure that our edges match up with our axis of deformation. If we were to bend it along the x-axis, here we have bend it along the z-axis, it would look something like what we have here. Notice how all of the loops or vertices wrapping around the mesh are in the line with the z-axis. This holds true with any deformation axis you're wrapping around the mesh are in our example, this holds true with any deformation axis you choose. It could be the x or y or z or random direction. Either way, the edges across the model need to be parallel to that axis of deformation. So let's move on to show you the other shapes. For example, this elbow joint. We have these two edge loop, or this shape or this mesh is a properly deformed cylinder. Here we have also cylinder that doesn't follow the rule of deforming. An improperly deformed cylinder shown in our example. So to get better look at what is going on, so let's move on to show you. When you hold Alt and select, is gonna be selecting this spiraling edge loop like this. Spiraling topology that can lead to improper deformation. This shape should feel familiar because we saw it previously. You can see it in the videos about the fundamentals of topology. It was an example of topology that breaks one of the topology rules. Loops must not spiral down a mesh as shown in our tutorial. So these spirals are usually caused by a mismatch. You can see it clearly, so finding that mismatch usually fixes the issue. Looking back at our regular cylinder deform, like this, it's a regular cylinder deform. If we focus on the bend like what we have here, you can see it still looks a little rough. The faces on the back look stretched and the faces in the middle are squished. You can try to fix this by adding more loops. Before deforming cylinder, you can add more loops, but it then causes the loops in the crease of the joint that become even denser. You can see it deformed again. So likewise, if we remove too many from the inside, the back will stretch too much. What we want to do, ideally, I have more geometry on the back, geometry on the side, on the inside. Before we try to do this on an elbow joint, we should take closer at stretching and compressing topology. And here we have, let's take a closer look at stretching and compressing. We have this plane over there. Again, starts with a grid. If we look at this 3D mesh, we can see how a mesh is supposed to stretch and compress like this. It's going to be stretching and compressed at this location, at this area. You can see the left side stretches out. In the middle, it becomes square again, and on the right, it is squished together, as shown here. Here we have in our example stretched and compressed grid with improper deformation as shown here. And you can see it clearly. You can see right away the preceding grid looks messy. And instead of compressing or stretching into rectangles, these rectangles stretch out across the corners and create a diamond shape shown here. While it may not look bad while the plane is flat, if we start to bend it along the X or Y axis, it looks very rough. And here we have a comparison of a properly deformed bent plane at the right and an improperly deformed bent plane at the left as shown in our example. At this just a plane, the deformations get even worse when we move the more complex shapes. If we make a loop out of the plane, we can make something similar to the eye, lid or mouth. This is a common shape in topology to manage something that needs to be able to stretch or compress radially. You can see the loops in this example over there. It also shows the directions in which the topology should be able to stretch. And this is appropriately deformed, plane looped to create a mouth or eyelid. See you in next tutorial that I will talk about identifying poor topology on cylinder. We will learn about some other deforming topology rules, and that's it. Thanks for watching.